Gameplan for Good is the podcast that brings you stories of world shakers and champions of change. Join us as we dive into the journeys of innovative business leaders who are making a positive impact and creating a better world. Uncover their game plans for success, discover groundbreaking innovations, and be inspired to unleash your own potential. Get ready for a brighter future in business with Gameplan for Good. Welcome to Gameplan for Good. This is the very first episode, and it's a great honor to have Thomas Meier here. Thomas is a business consultant. Thomas, your company's called Business 2.0 Consulting.
That's correct.
You're also a mentor for the city of Casey. So we're going to talk about all things business today, and we're going to talk about your journey and some of the insights. Actually, you have a very interesting past. You come from an interesting country. We're going to talk about some of that as well, and basically business in 2023, what it looks like, what people should be focusing on. But I don't want to talk too much. I really want to hear from you. So tell me about the country you came from. Let's start there.
Well, first of all, it's the sixth smallest country in the world. Let's just start with that, and it's called Liechtenstein. It's actually a principality, if you really will understand. Principality, 35,000 people, probably Dandenong is probably bigger than that, right?
Yeah, wow.
160 square kilometers, and it's so small. Everyone knows each other, and that's the reason why I had to leave the country, right?
Yeah, right. So, and that your accent, obviously, that's a typical I can't say that. Liechtenstein. I want to say it correctly, but Liechtenstein.
That's all right. Yeah.
Close enough.
It is obviously Central Europe means it's a German-speaking country, and actually, I read this quote on Twitter the other day, and it said, "Don't make fun of someone with an accent, because that means they're multilingual."
Right.
And it was so powerful, because my journey took me to Singapore as well after I left Europe, and Singapore being a multicultural country, right? There's Chinese, there's Malays, there's Indians, and all with their own specific dialects, right? And accents, and it is so important, to understand that people have different backgrounds, and just because you have a different accent or you have an accent doesn't make you more or less a good person, right? Yeah.
Yeah, your accent is lovely.
Thanks.
Hey, so, I've done it again. That is the second time. That is the second time I've spilt water on the desk within 20 minutes. Okay, we're going to have to cut for a moment. All right, so we're all cleaned up here, which is fantastic. So, Singapore, is this where you met your wife?
It is, yeah. And it's an interesting story behind that, because after my apprenticeship, which is one in electronics in a high vacuum industry, I wanted to go abroad. And this high vacuum industry didn't allow me to do that really. And so I was looking around and saying, where can I find an opportunity to go abroad, right? Banking popped up, right? So I joined UBS in the banking IT department, right? And really, I remember in my first interview, actually, I was talking to my future manager, and why do you want to join UBS, right? He asked me, and I said, well, great bank, international bank, which means opportunities abroad. He looked at me and said, Thomas, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I come back from a 3-year New York stint, right? So pay your dues, do the right thing, and you're off in no time, right? This opportunity came up in Singapore for a project in the Singapore branch, and was supposed to be an 18-month project to deploy a new system, right? 18 months became 18 years.
Wow.
19 years to be exact, right?
Wow.
And that's where I met my wife, and it's been such a great pleasure and honor to be in this country, because it teaches me to be humble, even more so than when I was before, because it is a multicultural society, and because it's a multicultural society, you automatically start to blend in.
So I'm interested to know if that experience taught you to be humble, what was the Thomas before that like?
Rebellious.
Yeah.
Rebellious, and well, actually rebellious and curious, probably two good words, right? And there wasn't a day in my life where I didn't question how things work, and how we can do things differently or create something out of nothing. And sometimes, and I got into trouble for that.
So this is going back as early as what age?
My childhood, my early childhood, up to 12, 13 years, right?
So can you give me an example of things that you were doing that was where you're using lateral thinking skills at a young age?
Well, I can give you an idea about something that really got me into trouble. We had this work done in front of our house, and workers went home, patched up actually covered the hole. The hole was still there. Covered the hole. Went up for the day. Went home for the day, and I thought, what's in there? And I want to know what's in there. I don't know exactly what's in there. So while I was alone, I lifted those covers, went in there, and someone came, or I heard someone coming. What I did is I came, rather than coming out of the hole, I stayed in there and covered myself, right? Waiting for people to come and go again. Thomas, where are you? Thomas, where are you? Right? Not a word, And I played this game for probably 15, 20 minutes, and by the time the whole family was out, up in arms, where's Thomas, right? Where's Thomas? We lost Thomas. Oh, where is he, right? And I got a decent beating after that. But it's that core of the curiosity. What's in there, right? What's in there? What are they doing? Is there something interesting for me to do in there? And it's really that curiosity. How do you drive a car? Another aspect. Petrol head all my life.
At the same age, you were thinking, how do I drive a car?
Yeah. 6, 7 years old, right? I was tall enough to be able to sit in front of this driver's seat. Our house is probably 80, 90 meters away from the main road, slightly elevated. Went in there, again, no one around. Went in there, managed to press the clutch because I always studied what my dad does, right? Pressed the clutch, undid the handbrake. Oh, the car drove. Probably in the wrong direction, but it drove, right? Until this massive bang, right?
Wow.
And a bang into this parked bus, which really was my savior, because if the bus wouldn't have been there, I would have been on the main road and I probably wouldn't be sitting here today now.
Wow.
Again, curiosity, right?
Yeah.
Throughout my whole life.
So curiosity is a big part of how you approach consulting with businesses. So because we're talking about that, tell me about how that translates to what you do now, that whole the whole concept of curiosity and its impact on how people run their businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. Curiosity allows me to ask one question or one word, and it's the why question. Why are we doing it this way in your business? Because I don't bring baggage into a business. I'm impartial, and I genuinely want to understand, because there might be a reason why things are done in a certain way in that business. Most often, there is no good reason behind that, but in some cases there is, right? And I'm getting educated at that. But this whole process of questioning why lights in the business owners' minds or in the team's minds, and say, actually, you're right, we have never thought about that. Let alone considering, is there a better way to do things, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect is this curiosity also leads me to live the formula for change. What's the formula for change, right? David Gleicher basically studied what situations or what conditions do need to be in place for a business to undergo and adopt change, right? And he came up with this really simple formula called dissatisfaction times vision times first steps have to be bigger than the resistance to change.
Say that again.
Yeah, dissatisfaction is one factor.
Yep.
Vision and first steps. So you got to be dissatisfied about the status quo in some shape or form, right? Phone stopped ringing. My gross profit isn't really not that strong. prices have gone up, staffs leaving me left, right, and center. I'm dissatisfied about something. I need to have a vision on how things can be done better. Vision, right? What can the future look like? How can we be a better business in the end? And then it has to start with the first step. What do I do to get going onto this journey of change? And that's really where the kicker is now. Only when this product of dissatisfaction times vision times first steps is bigger than the resistance to change, which is innate in all of us, only then can change really take place in an organization.
But I guess sometimes that dissatisfaction, because we're so focused on what we're doing in our business, being in the business, working in the business, that there's dissatisfaction from all sides, it feels like, but we don't necessarily know where that dissatisfaction is coming from. Two
and there's a nice story about that as well. The dog on a nail story. These two blokes, walking down the road, and then they heard a dog whining. They saw the house there. Well, it's a dog whining. Walked up to the owner, say, "Hey mate, why is your dog whining?" "Well, because he's sitting on a nail." "Huh? What do you mean?" "He's sitting on a nail." "Well, why doesn't he get off that nail, right? I mean, who would want to sit on a nail?" And the answer was, because it doesn't hurt enough. And I have gotten used to that numb feeling, right? I'm a bit uncomfortable, but at the same time, I've gotten used to that. So the dissatisfaction you talked about earlier on there, Shad, is the same thing. I'm okay that I have staff that doesn't really perform, and because I don't have the skills to talk to them and try to fix that. I'm okay if my margins have deteriorated because I don't know what to do with that, right? Yeah. And so it's now then my role as either a coach or a consultant, and I'll talk about this in a minute, either as a coach or a consultant to come in and shake that tree and make them realize that this is not right and that there is a better way. There's a better way to build what I call your ideal business, right?
I love that, shake the tree. I love that. And so that would be uncomfortable to begin with.
Absolutely.
Because you can get you can become comfortable with being uncomfortable, correct?
Yes.
So if you're shaking that tree often and regularly, which is, I know that's something you talk about, and you're reassessing, then obviously that can become more comfortable for you.
It is, yeah. But the reality is that, and that's a certain aspect I really love about my job, that these sometimes even confrontational discussions I need to have. I say, why am I the only one saying this, right? It's your business, right? Yes, I'm invested, but it's your business.
You're sitting on a nail.
You're sitting on a nail, but I'm the only one saying that, so help me out, what am I missing, right? And so it can, so I got to turn up the volume in these discussions sometimes, and to a point where, happened once to me actually, where an owner walked out. I say, right. Thomas, we're done. Okay, what do you mean? Well, I'm just trying to, facilitate change in this business here. Walked out, came down, cooled down. We managed to patch it up. But the point is, you have to force that issue. You have to highlight that this is not right, or that there's, or like I said, that there's a better way to do things, right? And and leading a business, being a leader in a business, sometimes is hard. We have to make hard choices as leaders of business.
So I would like to talk about your game plan for good. So I asked you a question when the second time we met up, and I said to you, well, what are your objectives in your business? Like, where are you going? What do you see in the future? And you said to me, I just want to get my message out to more people and help more businesses. That's it. And I thought, wow, that's really, I love that altruistic mission to just help as many businesses as possible. Is that accurate? Is that what you're all about?
That's ultimately what it is. Let me take a step back here. Actually, 2013, I had a corporate career all my life up to 2013, right? And so I came to this junction and saying, what am I doing? IBM management consultant, right? Great company, great skills, great training, but something's missing. Something's missing, right? So I had both what I call a push away from corporate, but at the same time I had this curiosity kicking in again, right? It was a pull, right? And I literally, I kid you not, I literally sat at a meeting, and obviously being at that time, in an Asia Pacific type role, and we discussed performance of a particular project, and I thought to myself, great, we have delivered this project, we have delivered all the milestones, but I, as an individual consultant on the project, have no contact or connection to the ultimate stakeholders, the C-level suite, of the company.
Yeah.
All I'm doing is I'm probably moving a couple of KPIs on someone's management report, right? So the reality is people buy from people.
Yes.
And people do business with people, right? And because I didn't see the other person of that transaction, I said, something's missing, something's got to change.
Yep.
Curiosity, how would it look like if I start my own business? I certainly have a big toolkit with me, right? Coming from 10 years IBM, massive toolkit. But how would it be, for me to then start this off? And so that was my mission, July 1, 2013. My own business, not a single lead. Being in the country for 2 years by that time, new industry, small business, new industry. So it couldn't get any worse than that, right?
Yeah.
Absolute ground zero, Groundhog Day, right? And so I said, but hey, you made a decision and you just got to make it work. And my mission was to get closer to people again. Sounds funny, right? But the reality was to get closer to people in business again, right?
Yeah.
So today I'm working with small business owners, directors, managing partners, whatever it might be, as well as the team. I just finished a goal setting session with one of my clients. 15 people in the room, right? Everybody in the business in the room, 1 hour goal setting session. And I can touch these people, right? I can touch these people. I get up in the morning because I change people's lives. And I know this sounds pretty big, but that's what I do. That's really what I do. Had a first call with one of my long-term clients, and I asked him, what do you hate most about being a business owner, right? And he said, Thomas, the fact that I cannot go and leave for at least a week and my bloody phone doesn't stop ringing, right? I hate that with a passion. Why doesn't it have to be this way, right? And so fast forward 4 years, right? And this guy is now going to Europe in six weeks in September, October.
Yeah, good.
Because we have facilitated that journey for him to grow and delegate, most importantly, let go as well.
Yes, yeah.
As an owner.
Yeah.
And start to trust people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been through that experience as well. Going from, in video production, obviously there's a lot of steps in taking your client through the whole video production process, from conceptualization through to publishing. Yeah. And when you're small in business, before you start to scale, obviously you need to wear a lot of different hats. And so you get used to your own processes. And me even sending off footage for somebody else to edit and trusting them with that has been a big thing in the past. Obviously, thankfully I've grown in those areas. I'm able to delegate now. Yeah. But that was a big learning curve for me, was to actually, and being a bit of a perfectionist doesn't help either. You just want it perfect. So if I get someone else to do it, then I'm going to have to train them to do it my way. But there's another thing of, well, if I give it off to somebody else, maybe I can find some value in the way that they do it, and maybe it doesn't have to be done the way. So I've been through that kind of learning curve of delegation, but it's so important.
Yeah. I just want to pick up on that, Shad, when we were talking about, it's going to be done my way. And I had this very discussion with this person I was talking about earlier on, right? Can't go for a leave for a week without the phone not ringing. And because I do leadership training with him now as part of one of my offerings, right? And he said that one of my biggest learnings was that it's not about the how something's being done, it's about the outcome. So if I talk to you about a particular deliverable, right, then it's that objective we want to achieve. And first of all, whether you do that from 9 to 3 or from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. Is secondary. I mean, obviously barring production work and so on, is secondary.
Yeah.
That's number one. But number two is that as long as we both agree that this is the outcome, the objective we want to meet,
correct.
Whether you do it this way or a certain way, doesn't really matter. And again, he made a very point when at the early stage, he said, I'm looking at how he's been doing this, and I'm not quite sure I agree to this, but I just closed my eyes. I looked away, because I can't grow and I can't let my people grow by continuously being on their back.
Yeah.
So as an organization, we grow, right? Because you're being given a particular objective. You can do it to the best of your abilities.
Yeah.
Put your best foot forward, right, to that same outcome. But I, as an owner now, also grow because I don't have to do it myself anymore.
Yeah.
And great things come from that.
And you can't micromanage. Like you just can't. As you grow, you just can't micromanage. It wastes too much time. So one thing I found was that I would be doing the work myself, and I'd want it to a particular standard.
Yeah.
So there was some fear and anxiety of if I hand that off to somebody else to do, then the standard's going to drop. But I was also over delivering. Now I know it's a great thing to say, look, we over deliver, we go above and beyond. And I was doing that, but I was way over delivering and my prices were way too low. So I had this ridiculous standard on myself, and I projected that onto, I would have projected that onto, if I didn't have the learning curve first, I would have projected that onto anyone that I outsourced the work to or that I brought in. And so it's also, I guess that's one of the benefits of kind of stepping back from what you're doing and thinking, well, this dissatisfaction, like where is that coming from? And what's the vision to fix that? You talk about time management as well, which I'd love to squeeze in your thoughts on prioritizing time management and things that are urgent. And can you go through that with me?
No, absolutely. Because it's one big challenge small businesses have, and like what he said, right? You start off, you wear all these different hats, and all you're focused on is money in the bank. And the reality is money in the bank is an outcome of a well-oiled machine. And a well-oiled machine is actually like putting a bit of an analogy to an engine. There's one way you're putting an engine together, right? There's really only one way of putting a business together. And that's the whole business development part of a business, right? Or working on the business, as some call it. And as owners, we have the responsibility to manage that split between on and in. And there's this great quadrant where we look, actually 4 quadrants, right? Where we look at urgent and important across 2 axes. And the reality is that working in the business is always opposite to working on the business, because working in the business is both urgent and important 95% of the time, because I'm fighting a fire, I'm getting that order out, I'm sending this video off for editing, blah blah blah, right? Urgent and important. But business development, that 3-year vision, how do I get rid of this dissatisfaction? How do I develop this vision? What steps do I need to take to implement that, right? That is super, super, super important, but it's not urgent. I can do it today or next week, right? But if I deliver that video next week, I'm late. I have a bad customer set because of that. So the reality is, they are on the opposite end of our thinking. And when I say to some customers, right, when they say, well, why haven't you done that? Well, because I was busy with fighting fires. Wrong answer. And so that time boxing, or that non-negotiable time, as I call it, is something you got to build that discipline around. And don't overdo it. I tell my clients, start with half an hour, as long as it's quality half an hour, not picking up phones, checking emails, doing that. It's quality half an hour, right? And that time is the time you move the needle towards that 3-year plan, which we have developed together, right? So a big part of my role is that accountability, to hold those owners accountable to their own future, their own vision, right?
And we had a brief discussion about this before, and we were talking about in preparation for the podcast. Obviously, this is the first podcast. It's an important podcast for me, and it's an important podcast for you because it's your first one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in preparation, I sent you an email or a message saying I'll send you something in preparation, and that was 4 or 5 days before I actually sent something to you.
Yeah,
and it's interesting that you highlighted that because I sent you the preparation yesterday, which gave you less than 24 hours to fill in your details. Write a bit of the bio, give me some ideas for some questions, which doesn't give a lot of time. Now, that doesn't sit well with me, because I know that one of my things is that I want to value the people that I network with, and similarly in my business, I want to value my clients. I want them to know that that they're treated in a special way, that I really value their time and all of that sort of thing. So with what you're talking about, if we spend more time on the business, would you agree that would force us to connect more with the values that make us who we are?
Yes, without a doubt, because it requires us to go to places we are usually not comfortable with or have never gone to before, right? I'll give you an example. One of my favorite questions when I talk about business planning is, who are we selling to? Well, everyone who walks through that door. Okay. Question then is why do they walk through that door? Well, they have heard from us. Okay, great. Now we're getting somewhere. So, in other words, the target market which we want to attract is something that needs to be known. Demographics, psychographics, why people buy, all that. And I've yet to find a business where I can pick up a good set of target market definitions, because your average business owner comes out starts as a technician. Stephen Covey, E-Myth, really great book. Recommend this book, for every small business owner. And in that book, he talks about skills that need to be present in a business owner or in a high-performing business. You got to be a technician. You got to be a manager, and you got to have an entrepreneur on the team. So small sole trader, obviously, it's got to be myself, who tries to have these different hats, right? But it doesn't matter whether it's a sole trader or it's a company turning over $50 million.
Yes.
Those 3 disciplines need to be present. And the reality is most small businesses come in as the technician.
Yes.
Because they have worked for someone, they're a great plumber.
Yes.
And they think, I don't need my boss. ABN number, I'm in business now, right? The reality is you're just one of those 3 things: the manager and the entrepreneur who looks into the future, the 3 to 5 year plan. The value you were talking about earlier on, that's not happening tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. That's something we develop as part of a longer term vision and plan, right? But you have never done that. If all I can do, is be good technically in my craft, whether it's an electrician or an accountant, then I'm missing those other two, and which leads to business failure rather than success.
Yeah, so I was a wedding photographer for 7 years, which is a badge of honor really, because the burnout rate for wedding photographers is 2 years. So I
Wow.
lasted 7 years. And I was quite good, but I had in my mind, if I can be the best wedding photographer and create the most amazing images, then I'll be able to scale this business.
Yeah.
So I spent so much time on the technical aspect of wedding photography, and I wasn't too bad at sales, but I didn't do any networking. I basically advertised on a directory, which was a good directory. Shout out to Easy Weddings.
Yeah.
So that brought me in the work. That brought me in an okay amount of work, but I didn't really spend any time on the business. I wasn't networking. I wasn't putting albums in at venues. I wasn't doing a lot of things all the other business-minded photographers were doing. But I've got a really good friend who actually I'm going to invite onto the show. He had a wedding photography business as well, and we met at a wedding, and he turned up and he was in thongs. He was in thongs, shorts, and a Hawaiian t-shirt for a wedding, and I'm like, who is this guy? And so he aimed for a particular a standard, which was it was basically they get what they pay for. So it was the lower end kind of prices. Anyway, great business mind. So here I am running around trying to get the perfect shots, and he just had this great model where he was like, "This is the price point. They pay what they get for. They get what they pay for," and he ended up in having wedding photographers in every state in Australia, and turned it into a decent sized business that in the end ran itself. So I remained a sole trader, burnt out after 7 years, and but didn't really put the business or the entrepreneurial hat on at any stage. I just thought I'll be the best photographer I can be, and that'll get me somewhere. Fate will put me in a good position, but it doesn't happen that way.
Absolutely, technician at work, and it's such a great story, to highlight that, we have to be good in all those three disciplines, which is quite different to when I talk about an overall marketing strategy. And when I look at marketing in a business, there's three possible choices to make. You either are a value for money business, you are a customer service focused business, or you're a quality business. Best example, quality is Apple, right? Marketing, Apple doesn't have to be very, very good in marketing, because the quality of their product, is second to none.
Yes.
And people queue 24 hours, for the next release, because quality is just up there, right? Whereas value for money is the race to the bottom. And there's a lot of people in that space because they think that's the only way I can do business, right? Discounting. It's a possible strategy, don't get me wrong, but you got to have the turnover, obviously, in terms of volume, right?
Yes.
Whereas the quality business doesn't have to. Customer service, a lot of people are in the customer service game, because if you don't look after your customers, someone else will. So here's the kicker, right? All three aspects, value for money, i.e. is it priced right? Customer service focus, I got to look after my people, and quality. All three aspects actually have to be present in a business, but you only have to, what I call, beat the market in one of them. And that's a set of discussions we have. Where is your focus at, right? Is it customer service? Is it value for money? What is it, right? Okay, understand that. We make sure that we beat, not meet, we beat the market in this space, which means we gotta meet the market in the other two.
Yeah.
So customer service focused, okay, make sure that the price is still right. Don't have to be the cheapest by any stretch.
Yeah.
But there's still an expectation of the market. There's still an expectation of the market on quality, right? Meet the market, beat the market on customer service.
Yeah.
A lot of people, a lot of business don't get that right, because they think I gotta beat the market in all three, which is impossible.
Yeah, right. We're gonna change tone a little bit now. We're gonna go back to some of your accomplishments, achievements. See, when I first met you, I did not think that you would be a champion at go-karting.
It's actually a funny story because petrol hit all along, right? And you remember the story about driving the car?
Yes.
Basically, petrol hit all along, right? And did a bit of saloon car racing back in Europe, but then you come to Singapore, and Singapore is the place where cars are probably the most expensive on this planet, at least, right?
Right.
So I say, okay, my saloon car racing is out the window, but unless I have a massive sponsor here. So that's gone. But I'm still a petrol head at heart. So what do? Go-karts to the rescue, right? And again, I was so focused and driven that, I just race after race after race. The last 2 years of my short career, I did couple of international races in Malaysia and Thailand, in Indonesia, and ended up with a national championship.
So how does that manifest now in your life? That love for cars. What do you drive?
Well, I drive. We have two cars. A poor man's Ferrari, which is an Alfa Romeo. Actually, we had 3 Alfa Romeos in our life, and Jeremy Clarkson once said, "You can't call yourself a petrol head unless you have driven an Alfa Romeo in your life," and I fully agree with that. That's just something to these cars, right? Anyway, this is the Alfa Romeo side. The other side is a Renault Megane, which is essentially a performance hot hatch. And I'm not an SUV guy. I'm not a big 7-seater family guy. We have a small family, but it's just. Yeah, it just doesn't work for me.
Do you get in a go-kart?
Once in a while, yeah.
Yeah.
Once in a while.
We should go. We should.
On. You name the date we are on, yeah.
Yeah, I'll take you on. And you'll beat me. Look, I want to talk to you about you're doing some work in the city of Casey.
Yeah.
So some mentoring. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Absolutely. It's a really great program. It's called Back in Business. And the city of Casey has a mandate, right? Like most councils have, and that support local business. And what they do is they partner with business experts like myself to deliver this service. And it's really important and great for me because it comes back to the curiosity and the drive I have for people, for businesses, right? And to be able to touch more businesses. So as part of this program, you get 3 1.5-hour sessions with a business expert, with a business mentor. And it doesn't matter where the business is at. I mean, I'm working with startups, I'm working with established businesses. And while 4.5 hours is not a lot of time, but if you're focused, again, working on the business, 4.5 hours is a long time.
Can make a big difference.
Can make a big difference, can put someone back into a direction, or can create a direction. In some cases, I don't even know where to start here, right? To help me out.
Yeah.
And what's really great about that is that I have been able to touch another business, right? And they walk away. In some cases, never see them again. In some cases, there's a commercial relationship happening after that. Yeah. The point about this is that I'm touching another business, right? And that's really what drove me and what continues to drive me to support the program.
What's the most important thing for the citizens of the world in the 21st century?
Great question.
I thought of it myself.
Great question. And, in my mind, it really comes down to 2 things. The first aspect is the ability to be truly humble. The second thing is the drive of taking ownership. And I talk about this in a bit more detail now. The ability to be humble is a skill, a characteristic of a human being, not just a business owner, to be accepting of each other, regardless where you come from, regardless what's your background. And why do I feel so strongly about this? I'm overseas for longer than I have been at home, right? Close to 20 years in Singapore, 4 years in Switzerland before that. This is my 12th year in Australia now. And so, what's that, 20, 30 plus years overseas, right? During this time, I have been exposed to lots of different cultures. And I have told myself almost, that what makes this person different to me? Well, his language, his background, his color maybe, but he's a great person to know, right? And I want to know this individual. And I want to know this individual without judgment. And if more people are like that, then the world becomes a much, much better place. Because this aspect of you're in this country, you do as you're told. Why are you doing this way? I mean, that's not how this is being done, and so on. Means I'm not accepting of that other person's values, right?
Yeah.
And so in the so-called modern world, a lot of us lose that ability because we are born humble people at the end of the day. I firmly believe in that. We are born humble people, but then we get into this whirlwind of emotions and experiences and
trauma
and
for some people.
Trauma in some cases, right?
Yep.
We just lose this, So number one, being humble, remaining humble at all costs, right?
Can we stay on that for just a second? Because you mentioned that, I think it was around the time when you moved to Singapore, you said, I learned to be humble. And I think it had something to do with the Singaporean culture. Is that right?
It has a lot to do with that, actually, because I was exposed to this. I mean, previously, Central Europe, right? European culture, whether it's Switzerland, Austria, Liechtenstein, Central Europe, it's largely the same at the end of the day, Here you come to Asia, right? You have totally different cultures. One of the most exciting things for me to experience really was in the Chinese culture, in a lot of Asian cultures actually, is that the smallest unit is the family and not you as an individual.
Interesting. Yeah.
Very, very interesting, right?
Yeah.
And my wife's Chinese, so I have experienced, and I do experience that, on a regular basis, and the fact that you look after your parents when they can't look after you anymore, it's a given.
Yeah.
No question. That's not known in the Western culture.
No, not Australian culture. Definitely not.
Yeah. So
not for all, that's obviously not for all families. Some families do look after their parents when
course,
they get old, but
broad stroke,
by and
right?
large, yeah.
Broad stroke. That's not the way it is. And again, I'm not judging this, right? This is right. This is wrong. It's an experience making me a better citizen of the world. That's really how I look at it, And so that openness and saying, hey, I don't have all the answers, right? So therefore, again, being and expressing a humble person right there.
Right, and important in business for humility as well, and even from a marketing point of view, we look 20 years back. In marketing, they would create one ad like your Cottee's commercial, Cottee's or your Weet-Bix commercials or your Vegemite commercials would be one commercial, and you're basically showing, this is how great our product is, or your car commercial saying this is how great our brand is. And it was all about communicating professionalism. And now things have changed. Now, because videos become more disposable online, it's more about authenticity. And with authenticity comes humility. And with that comes an opportunity to build trust with an audience. So humility on the inside of an organization or the inside of a person, yes, very important, but even humility as perceived as part of a brand is very important as well. So there were two things.
Yeah, the two things. The second thing is ownership, and I use the term below the line behavior or below the line thinking quite often, and it's simply a question of you choose. An individual, a business chooses to be above the line or below the line. Below the line thinking is where all the excuses, the blame, come in, poor me, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the flip side of that is ownership, leadership, responsibility, accountability, right? And if people are above that line and say the situation I'm in is in large part due to me. 2013, right, July 1, I started my business. I say, if this thing goes belly up, I have no one else to blame but myself. Yes, I have no pipeline. I got to go out there and knock on doors. Cold calling. I'm terrified by cold calling, right? And say, it doesn't matter. You took a decision. You made a decision. With that decision comes consequences,
Yes.
And the consequence, one of the consequences is door knock until someone says yes, right?
That's right.
So what do I do there? I take ownership of my own journey. And again, I very strongly believe that, yes, there are external factors. Interest rates are going up, right? But it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. I can still take responsibility for my future. Responsibility for the way I look, responsibility for my weight, responsibility for whatever I do, right?
Yeah.
And those two are really, really powerful, right? When I say those two, being humble and ownership, just coming back to ownership also from a business perspective. If we have technicians, managers, and entrepreneurs in a business, and we are saying we want to improve our market position, then taking ownership there really means that I understand what my company stands for. I understand the why of my company. I communicate that because people buy from people. I mentioned this earlier on.
Yes.
And when people understand why you exist rather than what you sell, then you suddenly start to get an engagement and you suddenly start to build trust with the company, But I have taken ownership in developing and continue to communicate that, right?
Can you talk about how the management can get buy-in? Because it's all well and good for the top level to kind of sit around and go, okay, well, these are our values because this sounds nice. Or we kind of agree with these, and let's say it's a good set of values, or some processes or some changes, but getting buy-in from employees is a difficult thing to do, to get them to have to use above the line thinking is not easy. Can you give just some advice for how management might be able to tackle that issue?
Two things. First of all, break down the organizational barriers. That's number one. Number two, build a culture after that, right? So when we talk about organizational barriers, of course, if I have a management structure and we have a team leader there, who manages a group of people, that's the organization. That's how the organization needs to function. The managing director can't talk to everybody all day, every day, right?
Yes.
And that's why we have our organizational structures in place. But that is to deliver a service, to deliver our technical ability, right? Technician. I'm a specialist accountant. I'm a specialist bookkeeper. I'm a great plumber. So the technical ability, and that's where the structure to a large extent comes from. But when we talk about bigger term, strategic and vision and purpose type discussions, organization structure does not exist, is irrelevant. So we break that down. And that's why I was talking about earlier on that goal setting session, right? That's why everyone in the company is part of the goal setting session. There's no different session with the management team and with a clerk. Don't have that because the organizational structure does not exist when it comes to culture. Culture is a word that is non-existent in a lot of small businesses because owners don't necessarily understand that people come to work for more than just a paycheck, right?
Sure.
And especially the COVID experience has taught us that, And there was this big quiet quitting phenomenon happening. It has died down a bit, but right after COVID, right? quiet quitting. What does quiet quitting mean? Well, quiet quitting basically means that, hey, I had this wake-up call, the once-in-a-century type call, that life is more than just working, right? And I just do my bare minimum because there's work life. I have a family out there I haven't seen enough before COVID, right? And there's a bigger purpose to life than just working, right?
Yeah.
So when people were asked why they changed jobs, pay was on position 4 of that list.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 was all about purpose. I'm not being heard at my company. People don't have my back, because you come to work for 40 hours a week, right? So it is all our joint responsibility, not just the managing director, all our joint responsibility to make this the best 40 hours it possibly can be, right? So that point 1, 2, and 3 of that list is addressed, and people don't leave because pay is number 4 in that particular survey, right? Because people come for more than just a paycheck, right?
Yeah.
So break down organizational structures, build a culture, and building a culture means all day, every day, right? Actually, there's another aspect to that just now. Is when I talk about breaking down those barriers, it's also about what I call creating a vulnerable space. And the vulnerable space is really a situation where, regardless where I am in the organization, I am allowed to make mistakes. I don't get fired after the first stuff up. I'm allowed to make mistakes. Just don't make the same mistake more than once, right? Because that means you're not learning, right? But the thing is that, and it's interesting when you see some of the dynamics in these group sessions, right? Where you have the managing director sitting there, and unless it's properly facilitated, no, I'm not going to say anything here, right? Because I might be shot down, right? So if this is done properly and we create this vulnerability where it's okay for you to say something, it might not always be the best thing since sliced bread, right? But it is an idea, and oftentimes these great ideas come from anywhere in the business, right? And unless we are heard and deliberate on those, and some cases it happens, some cases it doesn't happen, right? But that doesn't away from the fact of the culture and that vulnerable space is built, so people are comfortable in speaking up, right?
Yeah. If there's a culture of intimidation among managers, and you can be in a meeting with 20 people, and there could be 200 really good ideas that could really propel the business forward, sitting in the minds of those people in the meeting, but no one wants to speak up because they feel like if they make a mistake, they're going to get in trouble. Exactly, they're going to get punished for it. So you're 100% right.
That has to be facilitated, and again, it's something I really enjoy doing.
Also, humility and transparency and openness from your leaders, isn't it? Because I remember Kerwin Ray, a little while ago, I really loved a lot of his stuff, and there was one video. I think it was just after the social experiment. If anyone hasn't experienced Kerwin Ray's social experiment, they should have a good look at it. It's basically a behind-the-scenes documentary of his journey into publishing content, authentic content into social media. Anyway, he runs these events, and in this one video, he had an issue with one staff member that wasn't doing their job. Obviously, there's a lot that has to happen for an event to be run successfully, and they had their processes, and there was one staff member that wasn't pulling their weight or wasn't doing something. They were making mistakes. And so he got the team together in this big circle, and I'm thinking, he's gonna publicly humiliate this employee, but he didn't. He apologized. He took it all on himself, and he said, "Look, guys, I want to apologize because the buck stops with me. It's my job to communicate our standards and our expectations." So he didn't even go into detail, as far as I can remember. He didn't go into detail as to what the issue was or who was responsible. He knew they knew. He knew they knew, but he delivered in such a way that he took the responsibility onto himself, and he delivered it in an authentic way. And I think that is that just blew my mind, because that's not what we're accustomed to. That's not how we think. As employees, we don't think this is how managers act, that they are completely humble, transparent, will even apologize. And when it's my fault, because Kerwin Ray or whoever was managing this guy probably told him many, many, many times, this is how we do it, this is how we do it. So there were no excuses, but Kerwin Ray took the bullet for this guy. You think about how that changes him and how he approaches his job. Will he ever make that mistake again? No, but not for the motivation of, well, I'm going to get in trouble if I don't do it right, and I'm going to get publicly humiliated.
That's right.
But because I love this guy who just covered my back and protected me, so it's just powerful.
And that's where this old phrase, leadership is earned, management is learned, really comes in. I mean, by him having that admission almost, right? He earned a lot of leadership on that day in that meeting.
Yes. Well, he was modeling also for his leaders to take that same mantle. It's like, okay, well, it's okay for us to admit we make mistakes.
Yeah.
In front of Kerwin and in front of the staff that we're managing. So, I thought it was a powerful moment.
It was, or it sounds like it was, right? I have the total flip side of that. Roll back the time to kindergarten. Thomas, my little boy, kindergarten, rebellious, right? You remember rebellious. So our kindergarten teacher had a very special way of punishing young kids. Right? Don't ask me why that's the case, but in Central Europe, small kids, young kids, hate raisins with a passion. Hate raisins,
Okay, they're full of sugar though.
They can kill someone with raisins, right? No, run away, fine, long, right? So you do something wrong. She puts everyone around in a circle. There's a stool in the center of the room.
I'm just going to move that a bit closer to you. Yep.
There's a stool in the center of the room, right?
Yep.
She takes a handful of raisins, drops that onto the stool, and here's the kicker, right? You had to pick up one by one by one by one. Agony forever, right? You can't just chuck the whole thing in and be over and done with. One by one by one, and so this could take 5 or 10 minutes, because every time you feel like throwing up, because you hate these things, right? And I don't know what it is. Okay, you hate them, right? And so that was a total flip side, of the story you just mentioned, right? Where he walks away a leader, I walk away a beaten man, right?
Yeah, 100%. So what's going on with you? Like, let's we're gonna wrap up, but I want to know what you're up to at the moment. Consulting 2.0. Did I say that right?
Business 2.0.
Business 2.0 consulting.
Yeah.
What's happening with Business 2.0 consulting, and where are you heading? What are you up to?
Well, a key focus of me this year is, and again, it's in line with touching more people, right? I try to get my group coaching program off the ground, which is really not a networking program. It's a program where I bring a couple of business owners together, where we essentially work on problems of individual businesses rather than just give me some referral here, right? Networking 101. We run. This is run across Australia quite successfully, and I want to kick this off as well in the council area here.
Awesome.
That's number one. There's another discussion going on at the moment, actually, where I might participate in a Workforce Australia program. Workforce Australia is essentially a program. It's a federal program, again, helping businesses either starting up or helping them improve their direction, their operating model, their business again. And what's different to the city of Casey in this case is this program is much longer. It's a 12-month program. So as a qualifying business, you jump on, plans developed, and then you get essentially a monthly check-in with a mentor on how things are going, and so that's discussion going on. Hopefully we can kick that off pretty soon as well. And
awesome. Have you seen Gary V's 4Ds?
Gary V's 4Ds? No.
Gary V's 4Ds. So,
so you gave me some homework now.
I think you need to have a look at that, because there might be some opportunity in that model for you, because you're talking about helping businesses in group settings. Well, that's Gary V's 4Ds. I don't even know what 4Ds stands for, but he has different businesses that sit around the table in the conference room, and they basically just fire questions at him. He just has one camera, just following what his responses are, and he's got great advice. But through doing that, yes, he does attract business doing that as well. It's a good marketing exercise, but he's also spreading the word of what he can do. Not what he can do, but basically his IP. He has no real, his IP. He just shares everything. And it sounds like you're kind of like that as well, where you don't mind how many people understand, your secrets. You want to get it out to as many people as possible. So video recording some of these sessions with the permissions of the people in the meeting would be gold, because then you can then put that out on social media and help a lot more people.
That's great,
from one session. So I see everything through the filter of video, so I just have to encourage you with that. But I do thank you so much for being my first ever guest on Game Plan for Good. So excellent.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed the chat,
Awesome.
and that's, hopefully there's more to come.
Yes, I'll definitely get you back, because I have no viewers right now. All right, mate. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you for watching Game Plan for Good. Stay connected with us on social media to discover more game-changing stories and gain valuable business insights. All of our episodes are recorded in our Assertive Media studio in Melbourne.